Hi, stand here, prefer pronouns he, him, all the best for finance.
All the best.
Tanvi, all the best.
Shayan, all the best. We have one more coming.
All right, with that, I guess just one notice. Keep your phones on silent if you're spectating. With that, PM, the floor is yours.
Am I clearly audible?
Little louder.
Am I clearly audible now? Audible? Before I begin, a couple of shout-outs. First, shout out to my parents for letting me do this stupid activity. If you don't even know I'm here, I think I'm doing some hackathons in college. And then let's do it in hierarchy. Firstly, Angad, like he created this sock. Like we all sit here because of him. Like I haven't had the pleasure of being trained by him personally, but just the fact that we all sat on this stage, all is attributed to him. First of him. Then to our mentors, Vansh, Sai, Bahuguna, Keshav, Pranjal, all of these people. Like I've called Sai just before his NSEM exams. Like he's probably about to fail his in double E, but he still spent like half hour talking about a random ass question or a random ass finals. Lastly, to my batchmates, Dabral, Dash, Himan, and Mishra, my teammate, my long teammate, Chabra is not here. We have Sai for that. And lastly, like my baby doll, my work wife, my roommate, my brother. We made it, man. This was fantastic. With that. Yeah. If you don't like my speech, just mark my thank you. With that, I'll be starting off with my speech with the count of 3, 2, and 1. Panel, context to an action sometimes destroys the very essence of an action and the way it has to be perceived in society. 3 broad pushes from government in this debate. 1, on the rationalization of the actions that have happened in the past. Secondly, about polarization. Thirdly, on the banality of evil. Firstly, some clarifications. Note that the nature of the fame that the actor gets out of this is extremely important in this debate. Also, I just want to quickly point out that this is already a very reputed journalist. That means money and fame are not that big a metric for this person in the status quo. Gov cannot push that and treat it as a silver lining. Notice that a person who is already that reputed in their own craft, what matters to them most in the debate is legacy, the societal impact they eventually leave. That means eventually the metric of this debate should be that where in the world is the legacy of the journalist or the reputed journalist better off, and what does the society perceive him as. Alright, let's get into argumentation then. 1. Rationalization. Why does the release of this book lead to rationalization of actions, not just of Hitler's, but all of them? But notice how rationalization of actions happen. We all look for similarities in the actions that we all have committed in the past. What that means is that when I see someone has done something wrong and try to correct it, you feel a sense of sympathy or empathy with them because you have experienced those actions in the past. Before the release of this book, Hitler is just seen as an evil fucking devil who has no sort of commonality with anyone. At a point in time in which you give a reference point to people to realize who Hitler is and the things that he has done, why he has done is extremely important. But secondly, notice how the way in which this book is written, it talks about, in all likelihood, it talks about Hitler's experiences as a child, what his family went through, the atrocities on his family, what are the reasons why he did those things, and why does he feel regret over that. The problem with that is the narrative of the book is inherently written in a way where it promotes the fact that Hitler is just another human being who had all these past experiences in life that eventually led to him doing what he did. The problem with that and the impacts of this argument are multiple. 1. Notice that it leads to defending action of the current neo-Nazi groups and all these people as well. The reason for that is because now you can justify the reason why they're doing, because there's a certain problem and cause that happened in their childhood, and that is what is leading them to do this. On a comparative, when you don't have this book, you never have a cause to justify all these actions because these people are inherently evil, and the actions that they have done, irrespective of the context in which they were done, are simply evil. That means there is no justification. They have to defend this idea of justification. But notice how when you rationalize these actions, you also give an impetus for people and nationalist leaders to create this nationalistic identity that allows them to go ahead and take retaliatory measures against previous countries. What I mean by that is simple. Notice how China was oppressed for 200 years, and the things that it did in the future are justified by the fact that what they went through in the past. The problem with that is that when you give context to things and you allow for context to seep into objectively evil things, you allow for the justification of these actions. Media debates, news channel debates, like political commentary, all of this are influenced by this very action when you justify these things. That means people who suffer on the status quo, Israel-Palestine issue, because of the fact that what Israel went through and a war of survival, all of that is now justifiable just because of the release of this book. I just want to point out quickly, it's a sensational release of this book. That means the whole world is fucking influenced by this book then. Alright, second argumentation on the idea of polarization. Well, notice the way the proliferation of this book happens, and as soon as such a sensational book, Mein Kampf 2, Hitler's second part of biography release, which talks about how regretful he is of his actions, it's a world news, everyone fucking reads it, it's everywhere. The problem with that is that it leads to media channel debates, political commentary, intellectuals around the world coming out, going ahead on social media, tweeting about it, all of these things. The problem with that is because of the sensational nature of these issues, society is inherently divided into a binary. Because at a point in time in which you are a person who says that I'm on a spectrum, I think what he did was right, or probably it's okay, you are immediately called out by society and then pushed to choose either side, whether what he did was right or what he did was somewhat justifiable. The problem with that is that it breaks the social fabric and breaks the social fabric and polarizes the society in a way where now you have two factions who are inherently against each other. That means that all the people on the right side, probably Jews or other people, who literally just hate this book coming out and say that it does not justify what he did. On the contrary, you have people who are now apologists or people who not support particularly, but we start viewing Hitler as a human being. The problem with that eventually leads to the fact that now you have more polarization, and now you have people able to create these echo chambers. All these neo-Nazi people, all these extremist leaders now have a fucking justification for their fucking actions, and now they're able to convert more people into doing those things because of the justification that is that you have to choose either side and you have to be on either one of them. Alright, thirdly, on the banality of evil, and this is our biggest impact, and this is I think where we take this debate. When you notice, at a point in time in which this book is released, you start feeling that even the worst evil in the history of mankind had a human side to it. The problem with that is that all of this extrapolates onto people who sit on juries. judges, people who make decisions about people's lives on an everyday basis. The problem with that is, in the status quo, you give out punishments to people based on the things that they haven't done and crimes they have committed. On their side of the house, you now soften people, and you never have the ability to give out those harsh punitive measures onto people. The problem with that, this also extrapolates to the fact that things like sanctions, all of these things which are extremely important to be levied for you to create a change in world order, or for you to eventually bring an action about, all of them are thwarted by the very fact that now you have softened the people. What that means is that all the punitive corrective measures that happen in the status quo do not happen on their side of the house. This is like people being released early, them not going through rehabilitation properly. All of these things they have to defend on their side of the house, because the criminal justice system is literally people who interact with other people. In the status quo, we already have some sort of sympathy for these people within these minds. On their side of the house, it gets way worse. They have to defend why the criminal justice system does not fall apart. Eventually, on the actors analysis, I just want to point out that an event at which all of these things happen, all of the intellectuals now have conversations and debates about in the future. But secondly, when you have neo-Nazi movements, all these extremist movements rising up, all of this is tied back directly to the person who released this book in the first place to fucking begin with. That means on social media, Twitter, all of these places where this person interacts with society at large, which is the reputed journalist, now you are literally thrashed on these platforms, called out every fucking day. That means it's a direct impact onto the legacy of this person, which is the most important metric in this debate. They cannot skew this and talk about, oh, it's about money, it's about fame. No, it's actually about the fucking legacy that this person leaves to society and the way he interacts with society. Eventually, what we prove on Gov is that this will lead to extreme movements rising up, which are directly tied back to this person who released this book in the first place to begin with. At a point in time which you prove that this person is way worse off, the society gets way worse off, they have no chance to win this debate. I have never been prouder to propose.
I thank Mr. for the fine speech. Hello, whenever you're ready.
Satvik going as hello. Thoda shout out to DTU, to my friends, to Angad because I didn't give him a shout out last time. I just called him others. Yeah, that's it. They love me. Starting with my speech in this speech is for the plot, by the way, and you'll get why. Starting with my speech in 3, 2, 1, start. Panel, the motion does not specify what kind of journalist you are just a journalist. For all I care, you're a fucking sports journalist. What kind of legacy are you getting out of releasing Mein Kampf Volume 2? I have no fucking clue. The problem with their case is that they try to generalize everything too condensely, and I don't think that happens. But even before I engage with the nonsense in their case, I'll tell you one thing. You are a journalist, you are hardened over time, you see death, you see loss, grief, if you are a journalist as they try to posit, and at that point in time you've been hardened to deal with shit like this, right? At a point in time that's you stop caring less, because that's the only way you can progress at your job, be a reputed person in the first place. You deal with a lot of incidents like this. You don't care about the world so much because you can't do your fucking job then. You'd cry every time you see people dying in Gaza, every time you see a video like that. I don't think people work like that. You have to be desensitized to be a doctor, to be a journalist. I don't think that nonsense stands. But secondly, Joshi's entire speech is, if some information, say, challenges the fabric of society, makes ripples in it, let it stay there. Don't make political discourse about it. If, say, information about Israel being a fucker comes out, you'll be like, oh my god, this is bad. No, because everybody in the society supports Israel, so we can't have other discourse about people who got their lives fucked, maybe about people about this or things like that. But lastly, people have had much worse lives than Hitler. I mean, I don't see everybody going ahead and being this. I don't see why people don't treat Hitler as a fucking psychopath that they still do. Don't nonsense case from government. So disappointed. Then, understand. At a point in time where you're a journalist, If you're a reputed journalist, the world is hard. Why? There's a lot of competition, especially with the rise of free media in a Western liberal democracy. You have multiple media news houses. You have probably news media competing with you, who's a reputed journalist. You have other people, multiple people popping up at all points in time, which means the work of a journalist is something a lot of people do, and there's a lot of competition here. But second, that means that you probably have a lot of tight deadlines because things happen. You need TRP. You need people watching your news, reading your news, which means not only does it require a lot of skill, it took me so much time to write, say, my friends' write-ups. Imagine writing a fucking article every day, every time a news comes up, which is very fucking common. No, right? Then notice. At a point in time, that's true. I'll assume that you are just some general journalist, balance of probability. I don't know what kind of journalist you are, neither can they tell you that. Then notice. You probably still have legal troubles, right? You write a news piece about, say, Elon Musk, you write a news piece about Ronaldo, everybody just wants to, say, legal system the fuck out of you, which means you always get lawsuits. That's a lot of mental and legal harassment that you face, that's first. But secondly, you as a journalist want to uncover things that are hidden, scandal reports and things like this, which means the thing is that you have threats to your life. Your life as a journalist is fucked. But then, notice, you are a reputed journalist. Then, no context on what kind of journalist you are, which means you are most likely to be a journalist who has spent a lot of time doing this work. What does this mean? The life of a journalist does not even have a lot of money. It also means that you probably spend all of your time working away, trying to earn this money, trying to earn that reputation that you now have. Which means now, like most people, you want to go ahead and give time to the things that matter to you at a point in time where you have an option of getting all of this money. And then on the idea of how rich people, because you're rich, you don't want more fame. Literally, the richest people are the ones who want to be more rich. People who are rich want to accumulate more wealth. I don't see how Sai is posting that he's the journalist and not everybody is as moral as you brother. Then, notice, why do people want this? This is an insane amount of money because notice, firstly, you don't even have to make this information public. If I prove to you this, everything government says just goes down the fucking drain. Why do I say this? Because notice, you can sell this either on the black market or openly on the white market. Why is this important? Because notice, on Sotheby's at least, which is the largest white market, if you say curator exquisite item selling platform, anonymity can be maintained not only by the seller but also by the buyer. This is why stolen art pieces from French galleries end up in the house of Arabian sheikhs, and you don't know how they got there. They got there through Sotheby's, and that's important. Notice, at a point in time, that's true. Multiple people who are neo-Nazis, who have that sort of political clout, who have that sort of power, can go ahead and go to this platform and try to look for something like this. This is going to create ripples, but not in the world as they say. They're going to create ripples in the art world, in the curator world, in the collector world, because there's only one of these items. If this item is genuine, people want it. What does this mean? Notice, it's auction. Auctions work on compounding money, which means you say 100, I say 2,000, you say 1 million, and the prices keep on rising, they keep on layering up over and over again, which means the kind of money that you're going to get is going to be fucking insane, and I think you want this money. Why? An insane amount of money really helps you a lot for a multiple reasons. You can fulfill all of your dreams. You can give your spouse the time that you didn't give them when you were working hard toiling as a journalist. You could take your kids to that vacation in Paris that you couldn't take them to. You could go to Panama World because 2.5 lakhs ki flight hai. You could probably buy that Rolex. You could do a lot of stuff that you can't do because you were so busy toiling, so busy hustling, and now you have this money at all points in time. And also before that, sorry.
Bro, either you can be anonymous or you can be rich as fuck. Pick a side and stop floating around.
You can be anonymous and rich. Black markets work on confidentiality. You can get money through crypto. What the fuck are you saying? Right. Then notice, right? At a point in time, this grew. The value of this thing also becomes higher. People are willing to say spend insane amounts of money for this because the value of this item will always increase. A rich person will take this and now they can mark up the value to whatever the fuck they want to because they know that somebody out there is going to buy it. Some neo-Nazi always want to say, oh, I want the closest piece of Hitler. I want to have this. Some Jewish person would say that I want this fucker's regret to have with me. And Jewish people are also very rich. Right. At a point in time, that's noticed. There is also huge regret at a point in time you burn this, you destroy this book. Because this thing that you do, you destroying it, it's a permanent action. You are a journalist. I literally tell you the kind of harassment journalists face on a daily basis. You probably want to quit this fucking job at all points in time, but because you spend so much time into it, you probably, stay with it. What you need is a push. What you need is to break that threshold. You need such a great stimulus that you can break that threshold of, oh, I have money, I have fame, I have power. Now you have all of that, but more. And also your reputation as a journalist never goes away. You can just retire and be one of the most glorious journalists ever at all points in time. So I don't even think the fame goes away, right? Then notice. If that doesn't happen on their paradigm, you're still living that trashy fucking life. Your boss shouts at you, you feel bad. You have a financial problem, you feel bad. Your stocks maybe tank, you feel bad. You get a lawsuit on you, you're harassed by the public, you're harassed by the government, blah blah blah. You feel bad. You are in a position where you are powerless. All you can do is write an article to the government, write an article in which people feel something about it, but you can't do more than that. What you now can do is quit. You can go away from this, you can live your life, you can live with the people you have, but notice, every time you don't do that on their paradigm, every time you face a hardship, you think back to that book. You think, if I had that book, I could have escaped this. If I had that book, my wife could have been happy. If I had that book, my child could have gone to college. If I had that book, I could have done a lot. But you never are able to do any of that. And even if I posit that you are a rich journalist and you have a lot of money, I think there are things, basically hedonic treadmill. You always want more. You always want to give the people you love more. You always want more for yourself. And I don't think you get anything on their paradigm. On our paradigm, you get everything.
Well, thank you, speaker, for the final speech. PM, whenever you're ready.
Ready? Cool. Just one very quick shout out. I've probably done a lot of these, so I'm running out of things to say. But I just think that it's always fun when all 6 people are from the same thing on the same stage, and it happens often. And that's something that I'm really proud of. And if not anything, even if I've wasted a lot of time on this and fucked up my CGPA, this is something that will always remain with me. And I hope this becomes a reason for everyone out there to do it. Starting in 3, 2, 1. 2 responses to the bullshit we just heard. Firstly, black markets, 3 things. 1, no veracity, no one gives a flying fuck. Mein Kampf 3 by Miles Dixon. Who in their right minds can go ahead and ensure the veracity of something like this? In order for something to be verified, there has to be some actor who has a reputable name attached to this. That's when the auction mechanism will kick in. When there's no one who can go ahead and claim that this is something that has some authenticity related to it, you won't even fucking fetch cents on the market for something as bullshit as this. Secondly, Z library. Piracy exists. 21st century, fucking engineering. No one buys books in our college. I can't believe this is being run in Bhavana. The third thing is, I think you never know who you sell it to. If they want to use that logic, I can do it better. I might sell it to Shashwat Dash, who has currently $10 in his bank account. He can just take it for $5 and then release it to the public and do whatever the fuck he wants. If you can't, give me, and 99% of the world are poor, because all of us included. So that means relatively, we don't have the money to go ahead and give them the money that they want at any given point of time. You need to come clean, you need to give this information to people, start debating from DLO, otherwise just go home. 3 things then. First, rationalization of actions. I want to push 2 very big impacts on this. The first thing is, note, there are a lot of people around the world, there's a lot of population around the world who has been wrong, who has had severe instances of repression and oppression being put out against them. Like state instruments being used to go ahead and systematically gas people and wipe an entire people and population out. We think that's the context of the world that we live in. In 2024, we are not doing those kinds of things, except Israel-Palestine. But we are still somewhat better to an ideal or closer to an ideal world. How did we reach this point where we no longer want to kill each other, where we no longer crave bloodlust? We reached this point because the reparative obligation that exists and that everyone acknowledges is an apology, is an existence or acknowledgement of something bad happening to begin with, that this was objectively bad and that we are objectively sorry for this. Canada with their indigenous schools, Pope with the treatment meted out to LGBTQ individuals, Israel and Germany, Japan with everything that they did to women across China and South Korea. History has been able to stay with each other and stay in a unified fashion because these kinds of reparative obligations are fulfilled in this way. And note, no amount of money is either accepted by these countries because that would just be instrumentalizing the pain and attaching a price tag to it, but neither do countries want to give it because no one can afford to go ahead and reparate the kind of violence that they unleashed at any given point of time. What this uniquely does is it goes ahead and says that your past is something I'm going to deny. That you or whatever your people felt is something that I don't fucking acknowledge, despite there being multiple evidences of why it was painful or why it was bad to begin with. We think this is incredibly bad for 2 reasons. First, this matters a lot to communities. Pain is what keeps communities together. The process of reconstruction and rebuilding, like putting brick and mortar together and all those kinds of things, these are something that communities are built around at any given point of time. But secondly, politicians have an incentive to keep these kinds of painful histories alive because history does not repeat, but it often does fucking rhyme. At that point of time, I think narratives of unity, like memorial days, like going ahead and installing anthems, all of these things are incredibly important to keep these people together at any given point of time. When you tell these people who are unified by this pain and by this link of suffering that your past is something that we are going to go ahead and deny, this leads to 2 outcomes. First, we think genocide apologists. I am going to just put it like that. There is no other fucking way to say this. Israel is now going to say that there's a common past or history of people that we don't want to go ahead and live the pre-Nakba era where people deported us from one place to other, people instrumentalized in the ways unimaginable and all those kinds of things. They'll say that it's extremely painful and that suffering is unknown. And anyone who points a finger at them, they'll be like, you don't know how it feels for your history to be denied at any given point of time. This creates the formation of echo chambers which are incredibly difficult to break, because the strongest top argument or response to this can be that you create discourse, but for that discourse to be created you need to break these echo chambers to begin with. 2 reasons these echo chambers are never broken. A, because the history of every single individual in this hall is different, and when you equip me with the right to say that my history is something that only I can rationalize and you people can never question it, and even if I murder someone in this audience that's justified, I think it's incredibly difficult to go ahead and break me out of this indoctrination. You need to call someone that I revere, someone that I respect, or someone that has shared history in order to go ahead and break me out of this dream. But guess what? People who are of my color, people who are of my ethnicity, people who are of my beliefs also do not go ahead and break this pipe dream or break out of these echo chambers, because it is a good and comfortable reality or ignorant reality to begin with, because it increases numbers, it increases polarization, it increases political opportunities and campaigns and all those kinds of things. We think that breaking these echo chambers are incredibly difficult. Why is this bad? This leads to conflicts long lasting. Note, we are not going to claim that genocides happen more en masse. There are a lot of reasons genocide happen. So I can't really claim realistically in this debate. The problem is, when echo chambers don't break, time, negotiations take a lot more time. So the tipping point is not now echo chambers being broken and people coming to a negotiating table. The tipping point in negotiations now becomes that 1 billion or 1 million people are dead. On their side, we have negotiations much after the harm has been caused and can be objectively quantified as bad. On our side, when you break these echo chambers far before, you're able to come to the negotiating table far before, because you're able to warn the world of history repeating itself and things like that. This is incredibly important because more time saved means more resources, more people saved, and everything of that sort. That wins the debate independently. Secondly, banality of evil. Before that, Anga.
Mona Lisa is straight all the time. Is the actual Mona Lisa invaluable? Is it free?
Who the fuck knows who created? All of us know Da Vinci created the Mona Lisa. That's why it's valuable. But your first speaker says that you want this to be anonymous. You have to pick a side. You can't knife your own person, like your own speaker. The third thing then is banality of evil. We think that if evil is disguising itself within this audience, evil is walking, talking and noting like our speeches amongst us, it creates a society where harsh and punitive measures are incredibly difficult to enforce, because the tipping point of evil is not evil itself or the genesis of badness, like or bad or like malignness itself, is human beings who force each other to go at each other's throats. We think this kind of an understanding is incredibly toxic. This kind of a narrative that harsh and imposing measures result in bad consequences is incredibly bad, because this does not let us go ahead and equip people with the harsh and corrective measures that they need, such as going ahead and putting people in correction facilities, such as going ahead and putting people on like long and indictive trials and all those kinds of things. We think this weighs over and influences all the existing narratives in CJS and all the narratives in behavioral therapy as well, because of the quantum or the value of this book to begin with at any given point of time. This is incredibly huge because all of this relates to the legacy that this individual leaves behind. Legacy is the only real metric. I don't know why this person needs more money. If you are reputable, you're already making a lot of money. I don't really see what the debate is.
I thank the speaker for the fine speech. He called upon the DLO. Period. Alright, yeah, shout outs to, just these guys for carrying forward the sock. I didn't think that we'll reach a stage where like a final is composed of just D2 teams. So, yeah, kudos guys, working hard, passionate debaters. Alright, starting in 3, 2, 1. Before all their harms unlock, the burden they missed out on, and obviously Vip is late to complete that burden, is to explain that why when you don't destroy this, you're going to leak it obviously. They have to explain that when you discover something, you obviously go public with this information and then all the harms start, right? The motional side obviously looks like this, that we will not destroy this book. It never explains why on our side you have to necessarily leak it to the public for all their harms to unlock. We can just keep it to ourselves in an absolute worst case scenario if we think that, and of course we're journalists, we're not fucking stupid. You know that the world will be pushed into like political ripples and discourse and all those harms in the best case scenario on their side. But the burden here is to then know as a journalist that you probably don't want to come at this information, considering that can lead to a lot of harms in society. So you just keep it to yourself on a bookshelf. Who is going to discover this? There's no evidence on their side. That means all their cases are non-starter because they don't fulfill the primary burden of explaining why the comparator is leaking, right? Then that means in most instances, when you destroy on their side, our harm rather unlocks, because when you destroy it, you end up in a cycle of regret. Why? Because this is a certain thing that you've done. You've destroyed the book and there's no coming back. So you can't ever rely on this book to give you the value which we posit you will get on our side of the house. But let us deal with Sai's bullshit responses, because note, if this was a theatre drama or theatre competition, he'll get full 100 marks for the emotional speech he gave. But the problem is this, right? This is an actor's motion and you have to read the context right for this. Actors motion, I am not sure why this journalist gives a shit about the people who were killed in the Holocaust. Probably they are more proximate to news that's around them and present to them, right? That means I as an individual who's a Sikh, I probably care about 1984 much more I care about the Holocaust. I'm not exactly sure why the Holocaust drives my journalistic integrity to that extent that I'm not going to come out with information in an absolute worst case scenario as well. But I just deal with their case. They say black market and no one knows where black market comes from. NFTs, which are also anonymous, are sold all the time. Cryptocurrency, no one knows where it comes from, but it's $1 trillion economy. It's literally getting nationalized by actual governments and replacing actual paper currency. They say that you do not know who made this thing, right? Obviously, when you take it to an auctioneer or like thing like I don't know Sotheby's, they're obviously going to run a forensics on it and determine whether it's actual or real. They're going to compare the handwriting to the original mark-off and go ahead and compare whether this was Hitler's handwriting or not. They're going to check the paper whether it was 1945 or not. All those things can happen, bro. General knowledge. So the simple idea is here is this, right? You can verify this thing considering that you already have a volume 1. But I'll tell you what the bigger issue is, and this is where I tie into the idea of volume 1. Note when there's volume 1 that's already existing on their side of the house, all their harms are actually present on that book, right? Because that book actually justified the Holocaust. That book exactly explained how Jews were the reasons why World War I happened or why Germany lost the World War I. Justification was actually present in the first volume. The second volume, as the contest side, talks about regret. That means you go against the justification that you have already given to murder the Jews. That means neo-Nazi groups on our side of the house, even if you leak the information, are not now cannot possibly now work on conspiracy and say that Jews are the problem, right? Because you express actual regret and you say that I am empathetic towards Jews. That's what the book contains. So neo-Nazis and discourse channels that exist on their side on things like 4chan and Discord, they get broken much more on our side considering you're giving them an actual evidence that Jews were not the problem. When you break that and it's coming from literally Hitler himself, because you can obviously verify the handwriting, at that point you know this conspiracy or these circles get broken much quicker. The problem on their side is this, right? They say that the current status quo, and again an issue like I previously, but okay, the current issue is something that's good. The status quo is good. They say that neo-Nazis exist, but that's the problem. They don't solve it on their side. On our side, you give them at least a reason to opt into the counter narrative, which is to say that Nazism is not good, and anti-Semitism is not good. Those kind of narratives can only be pushed out when you literally have your leader or your like God who you call yourself going ahead and saying that I express regret for these kind of situations. And this is obviously assuming an absolute worst case when they fulfill a burden of saying that we're going to leak it. We don't leak it. We just on our side go ahead and make an anonymous donation and like anonymously go to Sotheby's and say that you want to sell this book. Obviously, you can have a lot of Dubai sheikhs and Saudi Arabia sheikhs bid on it. They are art collectors. I am not entirely sure why Shashwat Dash has to buy it, because that can be bought by people who are millionaires and people who want to go ahead and curate art. For them, it's a status of symbol, right? For them, they don't have to dig the content to the world. They just have to show that I have Hitler's original volume 2. That's what they're proud of. The symbolism behind the book on the kind of person who's written that book is so massive that you probably have a bidding war which goes up to hundreds of millions of dollars. Are you really going to tell me, as an average reasonable voter, that it doesn't matter to someone who's reputable? Probably not, right? Everyone cares about money. The reason for that is very simple. 3 things, right? And before that, it's just a thesis of this argumentation. It's very simple. That as a journalist who's reputable, you probably face insane competitions concerning things like social media have already started to come up. So your job is literally at all-time threat. Secondly, you face constant threat of life and harassment for legal lawsuits that Thakur tells you about. Thirdly, you can't publish what you want before taking like permission from your editor. Fourthly, you always have to publish whatever he says, right? Whatever the editor says. You literally don't have freedom in most journalistic instances. If you're reputable, presumably, and that's what the contest side only gives us, right? If you're reputable, you probably have someone who spent a lot of time in journalism. That means you've already sacrificed a huge time of your life going ahead and doing this activity, getting on ground and stuff like that. So the trade-off or journalism integrity bit is already done because you've done a huge amount of time in this activity. Now you just need a retirement plan, and this is a perfect retirement plan for you. You can send your child to the best of colleges. Hey, your child doesn't even need a college because you're a fucking millionaire now. But also, you can literally start investing in other activities, and your family can live with buy all happiness it wants. That's a net good. I don't think it refute that. Before you go,
When you go to eBay right fucking now, there will be 10,000 entries of American nuclear football codes. How do you think people will find the right one inside that?
Okay, you go to an actual auctioneer. Why do you want to go to eBay? But secondly, if you sell illegal stuff that is fake on black market, The black markets are not like, altruistic people. They are literally relentless and will hound you. Your identity is at least known to them because you're going to sell to them, right? Note when these things will happen, obviously you will be a person who keeps this in check. You'll go to an art curator and get this thing verified. I'm not sure why logistics of this debate matter, considering you sell these things on the black market anyway. And all auctions have a system where they verify their pieces because they do not want bad negative rep of selling fake items. I don't understand where the case comes from. This is just mitigation, no actual engagement of why money doesn't matter to you. Money matters to most to you as an individual because it's the most proximate thing that directly affects your physical security, your psychological well-being, and the well-being of your family members who are the most proximate individuals to you. Considering you traded off all your life just doing journaling, all sorts of stuff like that, so you obviously go on to word and go ahead and spend more time with them. That gives you more catharsis as an individual. I'm sorry this sounds very shitty because I'm running a money case in such a Holocaust-driven motion, but the idea is it's an actor's motion, so it's not my fault, it's the CAP's issue. Note that when this is an actor's motion, the only thing that matters to you is the money, and we get more money on our side of the house. They never tell us why the regret won't happen, and you destroy this and you face further hardships. For all those reasons.
Thank the speaker for a fine speech. Come with whenever you're ready. Come with whenever you're ready.
प्रथम टाइम 3 मिनट हो गए यार.
Pratham, going as Gambhir. If I do shoutouts, will you blame me? Can I take 10 more seconds? Thank you to my teammates for bearing me and for supporting me. And I am not a very emo person, but thank you. Thank you to the seniors. Thank you to everybody. This is something that I would genuinely say. Like, the confidence that this activity has provided me is something that's very important to me. And I think this is because of the training that I've received from my seniors and everybody in my staff. So thank you so much for that. Thank you, Medhavni, for the output. Starting in 3, 2, 1, go. There has been a lot of things that Op has said in this debate, but none of it actually makes sense, or none of it is actually their case. Why is that? Because if you realize and you listen closely, most of the shit that they've said is either contradictory or doesn't make sense. Here's the things that they say. First, we just keep it, but we'll not destroy it. We can just keep it on our bookshelf. But the problem is, if you keep it on your bookshelf, how do you get the money? The competitive world that Raj paints for you, how do you get interviews in that competitive world if you don't release this book? How do you get any sort of benefits of sending your kids to Harvard or probably going to the Bahamas if you don't release this book? Second thing, if you can go to an actual auction, you cannot fucking maintain your anonymity, because of which the impact of anonymity, getting money as well as not having to reveal your face, because of which you reduce the backlash, also goes out of the window. Third, there's a lot of people who can imitate handwriting, a lot of people who can forge it, because of which there's no actual way to test veracity. But also, the black market is filled with stupid shit, people just releasing shit just for the sake of it. There's no way for you to attest what is the credibility of that item and what is the veracity of that item. If that is the case, all of the impacts that they claim in this debate are either speculative or they have not proven it so far. Second, they say this is like crypto. Crypto is a $1 billion currency, just like NFTs, etc. The problem is, cryptos are a ledger. They have objective value because people believe to have value in it. What you're talking about on your side of the house is just pop culture. It's an item of interest because a lot of people know about it, a lot of people want to talk about it. It is not something that accrues actual value or has any sort of actual credibility. But the third thing, and this is the only good thing that comes out of Operation Once It's Too Late to say anything in a speech, neo-Nazis now become more soft, because the first part of the Mein Kampf is what justifies existence of neo-Nazis. The second part is going to make them believe that, oh, probably Jews weren't so bad. Oh, probably what we are doing is not as bad. The only problem with this is that they fail to take into account how neo-Nazis exist, what is the evolution of neo-Nazis, how does somebody get into an echo chamber. Getting into an echo chamber and becoming a neo-Nazi is you being an extreme radical. There's nobody that you interact with in society. You've always been isolated, questioned for your beliefs, you've always been mocked at, or you've been seen as an outcast or an alien who just holds weird beliefs. If that is true, then probably you have spent most of your time in this circle jerk, in this small community that provide you catharsis, validation for your beliefs. You felt good talking to these people. You finally felt confident in your identity and the beliefs that you had. If that is true, probably having spent so much time and so much effort in building that identity, that part of your personality and those beliefs, you're not just going to abruptly drop it. However, you do use it to justify your identity. What do? You justify it by saying that, oh, if Hitler, the person who was seen as the face of evil, wasn't as bad, if Hitler, who was seen as the ultimate evil, wasn't as bad and had human traits, then probably most people today that the left wing criminalizes or the moderates criminalize are probably not as bad. These people are also right. There's a case to be made for Hitler, because Hitler wasn't that bad. It was just circumstances. Oh, it was a contingency. Oh, probably he did it because of some mental issue, because of which it can be done by anybody. That is why there's nothing wrong with Hitler. What are the harms of this? There are a lot of harms, and I'll tie all of them back to the actor. What are things that science has told you? First, we feel like since most people that suffered the Holocaust, the generations that have come after that, their families, etc., there's no sort of monetary compensation that can be paid. The only sort of reparation that can be paid is owed to them by agreeing that wrong was done with them and that wrong was done with the community, that harm was inflicted and that it was wrong. What are the problems if this book comes up? What are the harms if this book comes up? First, more and more apologists now try to trivialize the crime that happened and try to trivialize the pain that was caused to the victims. Because now there's division, now there's a fissure in history. Some people believe that it was an objective crime and Hitler was actually bad, while the other people believe that, oh, it was just a contingency. Because of this division, not only do you trivialize the pain that happened to these communities and the generation that followed, because you're questioning their history, but also this division is bad because it creates a bad precedent for other people to go on the same path, because they feel like, oh, even if I do something like this, there will always be people who support me. There will always be people who will make a case for me and who will make a case that probably I wasn't as bad. Because of which it easily pushes people to small types of crimes or small types of indifference, probably passing racist slurs or probably discriminating against a particular person or probably disregarding their community and treating them differently simply because, oh, I'm not as bad, there's a case that can be made for me. But also realize the other impacts that Sai has brought in this debate. It's easier justification for other sorts of crimes that have happened in history. For example, perpetrators, majoritarians inflicting on the interests of minorities, majoritarians inflicting harms on minorities. Because of which, not only is there greater justification of other sorts of crimes, because of which there's trivialization, but also it is much more difficult for you to now get people on board for like inflicting any sort of harm on the perpetrators or probably imposing sanctions, because there's greater division, there's greater polarization in society. Some people feel like this person might be good, because of which they do not deserve as harsh of like imposition, while the other people may believe that, oh, this person is wrong, that's why we should go ahead and do it. Because of which it is just unnecessary division that delays the kind of harm that you can inflict on the perpetrator, but also it's an unnecessary division that increases crime and overall disputes in society. What are the impacts and how does it fucking affect the actor? First, once the perception is that you're trying to trivialize history of a community, you're trying to probably paint a person who is objectively evil as somebody who might be good, or people are trying to take the wrong message away from this. Not only do leftist lobbies, social justice movements, and human activists, etc., try to actively blame you for creating this fissure in society and actively blame you for creating this divide in society, but also for trivializing pain of a community that has objectively suffered, for trivializing pain of a community that actually had to face a lot of discrimination and a lot of backlash from the majority in history. This looks like emails that are sent to you. This looks like reporters who open up, who come to your house and probably question you with a mic in front of your face as in what was going on in your mind when you did this. Look what you've done to the society. You've created an objective divide that is seen in the form of not only apologists coming up and trivializing history, apologists being more discriminatory against minorities, but also small petty crimes that have increased against these communities simply because people feel like they're not as bad and there's lesser questionability of perpetrators now in the world.
If the book is not genuine and cannot be verified, on their side, the book will thus be dismissed and there will be no bad political discourse of pain and suffering.
Wow, Angad is genius. If I'm a reputed journalist, then everybody believes me because I've produced work in the past. I cannot have that veracity if I fucking anonymously reveal it on the black market. That is just bullshit. Then, what is the next thing? Court cases. Realize that if you've changed the mental consciousness of people, that if you've made people to think that nobody is objectively completely bad, that also reflects in the form of like jury trials that happen in courts on a daily basis. Criminals being given the leeway or criminals being given probably the permit that, oh, probably he's not as bad, giving them lesser sentences or probably making sure that this person does not suffer completely. They're let out before their trials end. All of this inflicts harms on the families of the victims, but also on the victims themselves. There's lesser victim catharsis. All of these individuals now rally after this artist, after this reputed journalist who revealed this work, because this work has caused this fissure in society, this work has caused all of this divide in society. But fuck that. All of this backlash not only causes insecurity, it also makes sure that you're a controversial figure that nobody wants to do interviews with. But the biggest impact in this debate is that you have more and more remorse. You're known for your legacy and you're known for the work that you've done. You're a reputed journalist because of which you've probably done work that has helped society. But when you've done something that has actively harmed society and made the situation for a lot of communities worse, you feel a lot of remorse and regret for what you've done. You cannot escape remorse and regret because that is your legacy, that is your own self-image. If your own self-image is tarnished, you lose confidence in your own self and you lose any sort of meaning in life, whether you have money or you have fame. So very proud of this.
And time to speak up for the fine speech. Whenever you're ready.
Everybody has said enough? Yeah, it's nice to be back in the I've like come back from work and I realized that this is still the nicest place to be working. Hello. I can't see you.
speech in 3. Starting my speech in 3, 1. And it is frankly borderline illegal to run a new impact on you, except the fact that they did not run on deputy means that they were never able to explain how big of a harm it is on the journalist. Let's talk about what the journalist incentive is. Because they're the only claim that they have of the actor is the one line at PM where they say that it's a reputable person and hence money does not matter, but legacy does. I want to explain why obviously journalism as a profession is something where you value money significantly more than things like legacy, which Gov wants you to believe. I want to do this in 3 specific ways. The first is that life in and of itself is an hedonistic temple, and obviously if there's a life which, and it's a tiring life that you live every day, where you have to go to your office, where you have to listen to your bosses and actively and you don't have the capacity to even post your own op-eds because the nature of editorials or the nature of newsrooms is extremely oppressive. We think that you already want to grow, because you have an inherent human desire to do this. But more importantly, most journalists are ideologically apathetic. The reason for this is the fact that they've been historically trained over a period of time that you have to be fair in what you are reporting, regardless of which ideology you are supporting. The reason for this is the fact that the journalist incentive makes you believe that your truest obligation is to everybody in society as opposed to you treating one group over another. Which means that for Gov's case to work, they had to uniquely explain why this person ideologically cares about these groups of people, as long as they've been able to frame you from first speech that the average journalist who this debate is about, because the debate is still stuck in epistemic uncertainty of who the journalist is, which means that we'd rather default to the average definition of journalist. We think presumably the average journalist is ideologically apathetic. The third is that this journalist has a personal life and also an old life to live. Obviously this matters because the personal life is something that gives you the most amount of happiness, but more importantly, you have an old life where the thing that is going to protect you is things like money, which we uniquely get on our side of the house. Let's first weigh why this matters. Before that, I just want to do the response on money. Their response to money is to say that you're going to sell in the black market, you can do it anyways, you can do it anonymously, so hence our case is just uncomparative. Our case was very simple, that there's an optionality that we uniquely provide to this journalist. The prior body for this argument is the fact that this journalist is obviously rational, because if all of Gov's case is correct, that this journalist is going to have lots of massive harms, then presumably this journalist will not want to do it, and or probably is likely to do it in a fair way. But more importantly, if it's a reputed journalist who is willing to bear the cost of all of this backlash at the cost of a huge amount of money which they can potentially get, then they can choose the option of selling it in the black market or going public. This matters because on Gov, you irreversibly take the chance away from this journalist to have any sort of optionality or to get any amount of leverage or to get any amount of money. That irreversible harm is something that Gov had to deal with, which they have not done across 3 speeches. But more importantly, I'm going to talk to you about all the optionalities and why we not all 3 and why they are definitively better than destroying. The first is remaining anonymous. The first is you keeping it with yourself. I think this is a good thing because then in those instances the Gov harm will never unlock because this information remains private and none of Gov benefits matter. In those instances, we think that on their side you will feel a huge amount of regret if you destroy because you wanted to have that false sense of power, because when you feel helpless about going to your newsroom every day, what you would want is that one source of power to fall back onto so that you can have that momentary power trip, but more importantly you can prospectively think that I can use it as leverage. Obviously this is a good thing than destroying, where the amount of regret that you feel is very, very bad. Second, on black market. Their response to black market is the fact that the black market is an unregulated place, anybody can sell whatever they want and it's unverified. I have multiple responses to this. The first is the kind of auctions in the black market that you talk about are also the auctions where the barrier of entry is relatively high, which means that you need to have pre-existing connections within the black market for you to even get to that auction in the first place. So obviously the cost involved in you selling a fake art is significantly high because you are going to lose a huge amount of personal connections. But more importantly, the black market has unique access to all information of your personal life. They can hound you down in a world in which you sell them fake art. This is the reason why things like forensics are actively carried out on things like crypto art, which is sold on black market all the time. You don't know who the actor is or the artist is, but you do know whether this is verified or not because this is done in the first place before this art is even sold. Obviously the black market has an incentive to do this or it will collapse. That brings us the mechanism on black market because it's uniquely explained because that you have the capacity to go ahead and earn money. Third, even if this goes public, it's good. Let's then deal with discourse first. First, the crucial burden that Gov assumes is the fact that this information is going to be the tipping point for all of the bad things that they talk about. The first problem obviously is the fact that everybody in status quo knows that Adolf Hitler was incredibly bad, which means that news organizations or public media will not have the incentive to cover Adolf Hitler in a good way, because obviously it's going to lead to crackdown measures because it is not in their interest. But more importantly, Gov also presumes that the average Joe is dumb in recognizing that it's a discourse which is carried out by the most conspiracy theorists, because everybody in this room agrees that Adolf Hitler was incredibly bad. Insofar as that is the case, everything that Gov talks about does not matter, because it is very easy for you to counteract that information, even in the worst case, if that information comes out. The second thing to note is the unique explanation that Angad gives for why Volume 1 was already a justification, which means that if you really have to control the discourse, the way for you to do it is to release the Volume 2 so that you can tone down the already neo-Nazi narratives that these groups specifically have. But more importantly, all of the mechanisms that they have for why these narratives are going to be prominent are at best uncomparative. Let's go to them one by one. The first thing they say is the fact that neo-Nazis are going to create conspiracy theories. Is this comparative? The answer to that is no. No. Obviously, they do this on Reddit right now, but more importantly, they already have echo chambers, because there's an incentive for them to do this. It obviously still creates a lot of traction. So there's no margin on neo-Nazis. Second, they say no. They say that you also need now want the nationalist leaders who can no. You now have nationalist leaders who can provoke a conflict against a country. Panel, I think this is super dumb, because why would a leader use a piece of book to kill people? I just don't know. I think that is super implausible, which they had to justify. They miss multiple burdens in this, they do not prove it. The final thing they say is the fact that this is going to collapse the justice system. Except this is a piece of information. Obviously, most justice systems in Western liberal democracies are strong institutions which are built upon a multiple years of trust. So it's just not exactly clear why a piece of information is going to destroy the entire justice system. This uniquely matters because their case had to be killed, which they don't run. Other than that, they just say that you're now going to get some left-wing backlash for all of this. Except the problem is they don't weigh this against all of the benefits that we give on money, which I'm now going to weigh in this speech. Let's weigh why money matters much over legacy. The first is that they can't get any incremental positive legacy on their side of the house, because you live as an average Joe. So it's just not exactly clear why legacy matters, insofar as you can earn a huge amount of money. The second thing to note is that you can't directly visualize the benefits of legacy in your current life, so presumably you have to die for that. But more importantly, money is something which you can feel right now, insofar as it is much more proximate, but more importantly, it solves the problems of you today, as opposed to legacy, which is relatively speculative, but also depends upon the minds of individuals. The final weighing is on regret versus guilt. The first observation I would make is just the fact that guilt does not apply to everyone. It only applies to the most serious journalists, as opposed to things like regret, which is going to apply to the average journalist, because it's not reliant upon this individual being ideologically aligned to any specific entity. But more importantly, there is a way to rationalize regret, which we explained, but there's no way to rationalize guilt. Proud to win.
Find the speaker will find speech of reply whenever you're ready.
Alright, starting in 3, 2, 1. 3 burdens that they don't fulfill, which has to be fulfilled for them to make out their case. Size, reply, and word counter. Two things firstly on the main harm. They say that you will obviously leak the contents of the book on our side of the house. Untrue comparative. We can still not destroy this case, the book on our side. This means when you don't destroy the book on our side, you can just
I would have four. Like,
yeah.
This chair is different.
Cool.
Mine literally is.
Restart. Cool. Ready? Restarting in 3, 2, 1. 3 burdens that they miss out on again. First burden is that why on our side you're likely to go ahead and leak the book and leak the contents of the book. I'm not sure why that happens. The motion doesn't give them the fiat. Secondly, they never prove the likelihood of that happening. On our side, you can just keep the book. But the problem is, and this is a unique harm that they don't understand, or when you destroy the book, right? When you destroy the book, it's an irreconcilable, irreversible action that leads to you having regret. That's the most important winning metric that we have in this town. A singular pathway to victory of you having massive regret because you do not understand at which point of your life, because life keeps on changing, you might need the book at some point to go ahead and, I don't know, get 2 minutes of fame when your reputation goes down, or when you don't have money, you want to sell it. All those things can happen to you as a reasonable average person, so you probably will not have regret on our side when you don't destroy it. That's the first burden they miss out on. They never explain why we leak it. But okay, let's assume on our side of the house you leak it. Second burden they don't understand. They don't explain why an average journalist cares so deeply about neo-Nazi circles propounding their echo chambers, or them going ahead and, like, I don't know, justifying pain and suffering of individuals. I want to gut check this argument. If Hitler stood right here in front of you in my place and said, I am sorry, are you going to forgive him? No, because his action is done. It's irreversible. You are not going to forget this guy, no matter the kind of regret or apology he gives. That's why capital punishment is not reversible. Even if the person says sorry, when you're on the news, you're on the news. At that point of time, you can't say sorry and get away with it. I rather posit that neo-Nazi circles are rather justified on their side, considering there's no counter-narrative to the justification that exists in the first volume. The first volume talked about anti-Semitism, and that is what neo-Nazis use to push conspiracy against the Jews. That is the reason why they exist in the first place. But when Hitler says, and that I'm sorry, my thoughts were wrong, only then you can create a counter-narrative against the neo-Nazis, and only then can you break those echo chambers. That only happens on our side of the house if you assume that we are going to leak it on our side, right? Secondly, I'm not sure that this person really cares about this thing, and even if this person cares about these things, I don't think the third point, which is most important, they prove the tipping point of their argumentation, right? They say leaking information is bad. That's literally saying that no information should come out of Gaza because it creates political discourse that can be negative against the Palestinians or the Israelis. That's the idea that they run on, right? They say information is bad. I don't think that's the case. Information gives you context. It's important for you to understand why things happened in the first place. I don't think people just see a book which says Hitler is sorry and suddenly you start creating more genocides. That won't happen. If people who literally want to do that, they can do that on either side of the house. That's extremely uncomparative. So the harm also doesn't exist on the third burden, right? Why do you care? We don't understand. But even if you care, I think you care more about the money that is more proximate to you. And I know this sounds very stupid again, but the idea is that money is the most proximate thing to you as an individual, because once it gives you this weighing that legacy only comes when you die. It comes after. There's a huge timeline before you and your legacy starts to kick in, right? Money you get right now. That means in the short term you get the maximum amount of benefit. No engagement on 3 speeches of why money is not important to this person or why money won't come to this person when you sell this. They only have technical issues and logistical problems. They say, oh, you won't get it verified. But there are forensics that can get it verified, because that's how stupid their arguments sound in response to our rights. Because no, when you have forensics, you can justify that it's a paper from 1947. That's how all paintings get verified. It's forensics. How can you lie in forensics? I am not sure. They say, oh, eBay has nuclear codes. But who the fuck is buying nuclear codes from eBay? No one is going to do that, right? When you verify this in Sotheby's or our side of the house, you put it up in auction, you put it up in the black market, there's going to be bidding once it's verified, right? That bidding gives you money, no engagement from their side on that particular argument. That means you get more money on our side of the house. We told you why it's important, because one, you have already done your journalistic integrity bit, considering you're reputable. Obviously that means that you've spent a long career within the journalism, right? So you're done with the journalism, you need a retirement plan, you need to plan for your family, you need to go ahead and give your children the best life they have, your spouse the best life they have, and that means you can stay at home and literally live the life of a millionaire on our side of the house in the average case. I think that's something that you value the most, because that gives you the maximum amount of happiness. This is not a THVT motion, so don't judge it that way. It's an actor's motion that will deal with why the actor cares so much about this one ideology, why it's going to leak it, and thirdly, why legacy matters more than money. So no weighing on that, and I think for all those reasons, they're out of the zone.
Thank the speaker for their fine speech. Dog reply whenever you're ready.
Starting in 3, 2, 1. Honestly, the person that I respect the most in this room is Angad. He has been to 4 international majors, done everything possible, and is also a very reasonable guy to team up with. But you know, he's still here at CBS. He still wants to make a mark on those first years who are watching us. He still wants to, like these people, to go back to their socks and tell their sock daddies and mommies that I saw Angad Bhaiya and I'm wet. At that point of time, I think that it's self-explanatory why legacy matters. But if you don't buy that, and there's just one very funny thing about this debate. We are both so parallel that the wing washes each other off. Dixit and Joshi, I don't give the wing. Dixit and Joshi tell you, there's a lot of hate mail that you get. Let's put this in debating analogy. Suppose you, I don't know, like you send a anonymous message to Angad that you're a shit debater, the world's break didn't mean shit, you got lucky, we got lucky, at that point of time, right? I think it's still going to hurt him. It's still going to go ahead and cast a negative impression that all I did after this time was for nothing at any given point of time. We tell you that this legacy matters to you and this legacy happens in real time at any given point of time. Joshi and Dixit have done enough analysis on it. I buy their weighing, but the problem is no one weighs their weighing against each other. There's only one line of weighing in Vansh's speech, which is, oh, average Joe matters, cares more about money than legacy. Who the fuck said that? You need to analyze who the average Joe is. You need to analyze, I can also counter assert that why did you become a journalist in the first place? The beauty of this debate is no one fucking weighs against each other despite debating for 4 years and being the most successful institution in India. It's a shame. Secondly, I think then now let's talk about the actual debate. Since you can't weigh these weighings against each other, I just have to do one simple thing. I have to tell you that they've been spouting bullshit for 21 minutes, and I have to tell you their engagement against us doesn't work. Two simple parts to it. There are 7 responses, 6 from Vansh which make no sense, 1 from Angad which makes a lot of sense. The response from Angad is it's actually very good. It's that neo-Nazis are more empowered when Mein Kampf 1 comes up. But we think the problem is we already respond to this throughout all the speeches. The context is what makes you able to humanize Hitler at any given point of time, and it pushes people further away from the political discourse and crystallizes people in those echo chambers at any given point of time. We have responded to that at any given point, in this debate. The rest of the 6 responses are just incomplete. The first response from Vansh is, this is not in the media's interest. How? Why? Who's the media? The second response is, people know that Hitler is bad. Oh, if people know that Donald Trump is bad, why is he making a resurgence? This is an assertion. The third response is, you can't tone down neo-Nazi narratives. If you can't tone down neo-Nazi narratives, we should live in a stagnant world where there is no changing of polarization and opinions. These are all assertions in a line. The fourth response, you cannot use a book to influence public. If you cannot use a book to influence public, then no one fucking cares about this because there is no legacy of this value art piece or things like that. It's just unclear why any of these responses make sense. The fifth assertion is, I don't know, I have not written anything. Cool. These are just a bunch of assertions that they have. If you are to give us a loss, please have a reason of why any of these responses are complete. I am not going to take a loss on rhetoric. I want a loss on analytical completeness. The last thing then, I think money matters and how does this money flow. There are several assumptions in their case. The first is, handwriting cannot be forged. Sure, you can have this paper from the 1900s, but what if this man's like Drake? He has a ghostwriter. That's also a possibility because this case is as fucking, I don't know, it's just not as probable. What's that word? I'm forgetting it. The second thing is, they had to, on a serious note, they had to prove 3 things. A, who will you sell to? Because we frame to you, 99% of the world is poor at any given point of time. With an equal probability of this falling into anyone's hand, it's difficult to realize why will this person go ahead and pay a large amount of money for this. But secondly, even if this is a sheikh, we tell you by virtue of the value that this holds, the sheikh can just pirate this and post this on eBay and all other kinds of things. These are simple responses that they never push back against at any given point of time. The third reason that they lose is, I think they never go ahead and analyze why this person goes ahead and actualizes the value of that money. Their only saving grace is optionality. I don't get what the value of that optionality is or how that person perceives that optionality. If this person is a random journalist, then there is no likelihood analysis on why this optionality is the only thing that matters to this person. Panel, win or lose, I know that they're not debated today and I think this was a fucking shame.
Winner and FPS and then pick the ballot of the URL also. Not just paper.